Sorry for the delay. We were actually waiting for the person to introduce me, but apparently he's at lunch. So if you don't mind, I will introduce myself. And okay, so my name is Irene, Irene Tinagli. I hope it's okay if I prepared the presentation in English because I know there are some of you that are English speaking. So I hope that there's no problem with that. And I'm currently a member of parliament, so I'm a policymaker. This is my first term. Previously, prior to that, I was an academic. I'm trained in public policy, applied economics, dealing with economics of innovation. So I was working in academia, was working at the University Carlos III de Madrid, and now I'm living in Rome and in Italy. So what I wanted to talk about today is a very hot topic. Normally it's called the future of work, but I prefer to call it the future of workers, because honestly that's what I care the most, and I think that's what we should be caring the most, about what will happen to workers. So the future of work is a big debate. It's a very hot topic in the past few years. If you Google it, if you go on YouTube, you already have tens and tens of speeches, of TED Talks about the future of work. So it's a very hot debate, and it should be, because new technologies and innovations are affecting and will heavily affect the workforce and the way we work and we produce and also we consume. But if you look at the debate right now, basically what you see it split in two parts. You have the techno-optimist, so you listen to them and they're like, this is great, we are undergoing a fantastic transformation that will improve our quality of life, our quality of work, we will be more innovative, more productive, we will work less, get more money, and all sorts of beautiful things coming ahead. And then you have the pessimist. No, this transformation, it's something we've never seen before. We will all be unemployed. We will live in a jobless society. We will, all sorts of terrible things that most of us will live in the utter poverty, and the very happy few will be the ones reaping all the benefits from the innovation that we are producing today. So you probably already are familiar with this kind of debate because it's very popular, and people are fighting over and over these two different approaches. So I have good news for you. We are not going there today. I don't care that much about what will happen in 50 or 100 years. What we are going to do today, so the mission of the talk today, is to understand what are the main changes in the job market, the main consequences that these changes may have on workers, because that's what we care about. And also, since I'm a policymaker, I also want to discuss with you what we can or cannot do, what kind of policies can be adopted to cope with this transformation. What are we talking about in institutions like parliaments, like international organizations? How are we getting ready to face this transformation? These are the things that I would like to talk to you today. So, what kind of change? Basically, technology, and this is not just right now, it's always been like that, tends to bring about two types of changes. Change in the means of production. So when you have machines and robots, so you change the means of productions, and changes in the organization of work. So how the tasks get organized. Just to give you an example, like the e-commerce completely changed the way you organize the retail. More recently, we talk about, for example, Uber, Foodora, how you deliver, how you distribute certain services or products. These are all changes that are enabled by technology, but they don't change the nature of the work, just how it's organized and how certain things are delivered, services or products. Of course, there are many potential benefits, and most of us knows about the benefits, but there are also potential risks. So we should be worried about that. So when we talk about change in the means of production, the potential risks, of course, are substitutions. So you have machines that substitutes real human beings and real workers. You have the risk of work polarization. What does it mean? Is that this is something we have been observing in the past 40, 50 years. What you see is that the people that have the skills, the competences to reap the benefits of this innovation, to be at the top of the ladder, they will not be substituted by the robots, because those are the people that do creative work. They cannot be substituted. Actually, they will be even more requested in the job market. They can demand higher salaries. They will thrive. On the other hand, you have very low-skilled jobs. They also have been increasing in the past years. For example, when we talk about e-commerce, that also had an impact because it reduced the request for people working in retail, but enlarged the people working in logistics, transportation, so in lower skilled kind of labor. So, but what happened is that we shrink the middle class. We shrink the middle skill kind of works and qualifications. So we had this polarization, which also implies inequality, which is also something we are very worried about in these years. On the other hand, change in the organization of work brought about other types of potential risks. We talk about risks of work fragmentation, low security, low income types of jobs. And just to give you an example, I'll give you an example of the gig economy. The gig economy I was mentioning before is a typical example of what I want to explain. So I hope I don't have, do I have to explain what the gig economy is here? I don't think. So it's like the work on demand based on internet-based applications. So you geolocate somebody that can provide you a service or deliver a meal or give you a ride, like in the case of Uber. You use this service, you use this worker for the 10 minutes that you need it, and then the working relationship ends. So that's the thing. So of course what this gig economy has brought about a lot of opportunities, because this gave the opportunity to lots of people to have extra source of income, like students, retired people, unemployed people. Most of these people sometimes cannot or don't want to have a full-time job. So if you are a student with a scholarship, you cannot have a full-time job, otherwise you lose the scholarship, and you don't want that. But you want to have a little, source of extra income, and that's okay. So you have the freedom, you have the flexibility, you do this whenever you want, in the days or the hours that are more convenient to you. So you can basically manage your time and effort like an entrepreneur without having to put the kind of investment or the entrepreneurial risk that normally comes with autonomous work. And at the same time, this also gives you scalability. You can have a fast and easy access to markets and clients that otherwise you couldn't be able to access. So that's a great part of it. That's why lots of people got very excited about this new gig economy. On the other hand, what we've been observing, especially in the past few years, is that actually some platforms, well, they impose rules that limits the freedom and flexibility of the workers. So sometimes it's only a disguised kind of autonomous worker. As a matter of fact, sometimes they are more like employees. Sometimes not all of these workers are workers that do this in a deliberate way just to have the freedom. Sometimes they're people that are in a need. They have no other opportunities or alternatives, and they are trapped in this kind of jobs, which, by the way, have absolutely no form of social protection, welfare, insurance coverage. So they typically have very low pay and low stability, of course, by definition. And at the same time, other companies are starting to complain that these forms of work are a way to get around the current work regulation. So they claim that that's an unfair competition for them. So others talk about commoditization of work, humans as a service. So the fact that you have all this fragmentation, works on demand, like 10 minutes, you dehumanize work. They also talk about social dumping. And why should we worry? about this. It's not just about philosophy. It's much more than that. Actually, it's very concrete for a policymaker. If this becomes a phenomenon that concerns not just a small niche of workers in a very temporary phase of their life, like when they are students, but if this becomes concerning a big chunk of workers for decades, at the end of their life, you will have people that have no pensions, no social welfare, and you will have to provide them with the welfare that they didn't have the opportunity to build by themselves during the life. So you will have a lot of social problems in the future and also a lot of social expenditure in the future. So we want to worry about what might happen if the entire work market becomes like, job market becomes like that. So what are the policy answers? In this case, how do we address that? This is not an easy answer because the challenge is to reduce the risks, but at the same time, not jeopardizing the opportunities part. We don't want to jeopardize the opportunities. We just want to reduce the risk for those workers that feel the risks. We want to guarantee workers' rights without killing the flexibility and the innovation. So it's not easy because what we have to do is to adapt laws to emerging problems. Sometimes we have to classify new phenomena. For example, the Foodora biker, actually, not driver, I made a mistake here, is an employee or an independent contractor. And in case you believe it's an employee, who's the employer? Is the restaurant or is the platform, the algorithm that picked the driver based on the geolocation? The employer, the restaurant, doesn't pick the biker. It's the algorithm, it's the platform that does, an intermediate. So you see, it's not so easy. But the good news that we do have sort of identified two ways of addressing this problem. One is to start classifying gig workers similarly to employees. So there are some jurisdictions, some countries that have defined a sort of a dependent self-employed. So you are a self-employed, but you have a one main client or employer. Or, for example, like temporary agency workers. This is an option that we are discussing right now. For example, in our country, in Italy, we are discussing about that possibility. So like treating the platforms like Foodora like a temporary agency, temporary worker agency. So they lease the worker for just the 10 minutes, half an hour that they need to lend them to the restaurant to deliver the meal. So what the good things about this model is that it's pretty easy to apply because you already have the set of norms to face this problem, because all of these norms is something that we already have. So we try to pick the new problem and fit into our existing models. You guarantee lots of benefits and social protections to the workers. You prevent unfair competition, so other businesses will not complain anymore. But we have to be careful, because what will happen if we do this is that the labor cost, in this case, will rise considerably. In some cases, 15, 20 to 30% more. And then what can happen? It can happen that the delivery of the meal becomes very expensive. And maybe, we don't know, maybe the restaurant that today delivers 100 meals every day will deliver 40 meals instead of 100 because it becomes too expensive. And so not only you lose the jobs of the biker, but maybe you have to fire the cook in the kitchen because you don't have that many meals to cook anymore. So this is an equilibrium that is very delicate, and as a policymaker, you have to think about that. Another possibility is that, okay, we are aware that we are going towards a job market that is more fragmented, where more and more workers act like independent workers or contractors rather than employees. So let's try to give more social protections and welfare and rights to the autonomous type of work. Like, this is actually something that we've also been doing in Italy in the past years. We've passed laws that grant certain rights and access to social welfare to autonomous workers. I know we could do more, but the thing is that in this case, you address the security problems without putting burdens on the firms. But at the same time, if you want to enlarge this, it becomes very, very expensive on the community. So you have other types of costs. So you see that it's always very difficult to balance. You always have to take into consideration many different aspects. But what I see here, frankly, is the light over the tunnel. I see this as a solvable problem. And I think in a couple of years, we could be able, some countries already have found a way to adopt their rules, their laws to address this problem. I think that slowly, because policy making is always a little bit slower than innovation to happen, and this friction is always a bit of a problem. But I think this problem could be solved in the next couple of years. What is really the biggest challenge of all is the changes in the means of production. This is the big transformation. This is the big question that most people are trying to address and find very puzzling, because we know what it means. We know that this could create destruction of jobs or a big, big transformation. I don't know if 47% is a number that says something to some of you or not. 47% is the percentage of jobs that, according to a study by Frey and Osborne, two Oxford researchers and professors, according to them, 47% of the current jobs in the United States are already fully, you can automatize them. So fully destroyable. They will be destroyed. This number is scary. And this study, of course, created a lot of buzz, a lot of debate. We are actually already living in a situation where almost half of your workforce will be replaceable and possibly replaced by machines or artificial intelligence or robots in the immediate future. It turns out that actually this was a little bit, maybe a little bit overestimated. First of all, the fact that some technologies out there available doesn't mean that all the firms and organizations will actually make the investment to get it, but also because it turns out that a job, it's not just something like a on-off, substitutable or not. A job is made up by many different tasks. And what happens is some tasks will be probably easy to be automatized, but other tasks will not. Every job has to do with some part of a social relation that requires empathy, that require creativity, that require wit, humor, adaptation. So what you have to do is to evaluate inside a single job which task can be automatized or not. And this is something that actually the researchers at the OECD have done. And what they found is a little bit more comfortable result. They found that actually the jobs that have over 50 to 70% of tasks that can be automatized range between 7 and 11% of the current jobs that we have. What is really the big challenge? So it's not so much the substitution, but the change. What they found is that, yes, you have about 10% of tasks, of jobs that most tasks can be automatized, but you have 10 to 35% of the current jobs that will not be destroyed or substituted by machines, but most of the tasks that they involve are undergoing a significant change, because they will not be substituted by the machines, but they will have to work together with the machines. So the workers will have to learn how to include the machines, the artificial intelligence, the computers, whatever it is, the platforms, the softwares, inside their daily routines, their daily working routines. So we have to deal with this change. So in this scenario, perspectives are a little bit brighter than 50% of us will be jobless in a matter of years. And as a matter of fact, even if we look at the past, some lessons from the past teach us that every technological revolution brings about some destruction, but also brings a lot of creation, can be very creative destruction. For example, if we look at when information technology entered our offices and homes in the 70s, it was pretty invasive and destructive. But at the same time, the IT sector saw the creation of over 4 million jobs in 40 years in the United States. In the 70s, less than 500,000 people were engaged in the IT sectors, working in the IT sector, which became 4.6 million in 2014. And even more interesting than that is the diversification. It's not just more people work in IT, but in a more diversified ways. In the 70s, if you work in the IT sector, you were either a computer programmer, a computer system analyst, or some other specialist, but minor things. Today, you can have 12, they have codified, this is the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the US, they have codified 12 different occupations inside the IT sector, occupations that nobody would have ever even imagined could be possible in the 70s. So that means that innovation can create new occupations, new work, and new jobs. And this makes us a little bit more comfortable when we talk about automation, innovation, and technology. However, this doesn't mean that everything is all right and we can go and sleep tightly as if nothing is happening, because it's not. We do have some challenges. The first one is how to handle the transitions. The big numbers I've shown, these are transformations that have settled in the span of 40 years. That's a long time for a human being. For a worker that is 40 or 50 today and has a family with kids, this person wants an answer much sooner than that. So how do we handle the transition? How do we help the workers to address the transformation to be able to keep up with the innovation and the machines? And the second is inequality. The work polarization that I mentioned earlier, this is something very critical that can undermine even our social systems, not just economic ones. So Andrew McAfee is a professor at MIT, and you probably have seen some of his talks on YouTube. He's a very, very good speaker and has some amazing TED Talks. And he talks about the tale of two workers to make this point about inequality. He talks about two workers. He talks about Ted. Is the typical college-educated, he normally is a manager or a lawyer or an engineer, scientist. So you know maybe the kind of worker that most of you will become in a few years. And then he mentioned another type of worker, the no college, blue collar, working in the service sector or maybe low-level, white-collar kind of worker. And he names this guy Bill. And what Andrew McAfee says is that back in the 60s, the quality and the life and working conditions of Ted and Bill were not quite the same, but they were pretty close. And what happened over the past 50 years, they started to diverge. Ted continued to do pretty well. His life and work conditions didn't change much, but Bill saw his conditions, life and working condition, got worse and worse off. And this is something we should be really, really concerned about, because it would be very difficult to help Bill in the short term. So what's the answer in this situation? What kind of solutions can we provide with these people right now? But Andrew McAfee has a simple answer, apparently simple answer, as many other experts in these days seem to think as a solution, which is the guaranteed minimum income. And they say, you know what? If we can't give these people in the immediate time the ability to work, we can just give them the money to survive and to help them to not continue falling down in the ladder. Now, this is another huge debate, and we have to be very careful, because in these kind of debates, also ideologies kicks in. And so you tend to evaluate this from your ideology, from your previous ideas, and that's not a good way to address that. Let's try to see the arguments against it and the arguments for it. People who are against say it's too expensive. It's impossible to pay for it. And indeed, it's going to be very expensive if you want to do something like that. In our country, we talk about 15 to 20 billion euros per year. That's a huge, huge, huge amount. Another interesting argument against it is complacency. It means, how do you convince someone to go out and train and to improve himself and seek for a job if he already has a guaranteed minimum income that allows this person to survive anyway? Especially if these are people that are not particularly highly skilled, that are not going to earn a lot of money even if they get a job, they might as well stay home and get the minimum income. You know, they do nothing. They could do something in the gray or black economy, enjoy life with the little that they get. The arguments for it are like, actually, yes, the money seems a lot, but we are already spending a lot of money in many different forms of social security. If we just could reorganize this expenditure, we could get a lot of money to invest in this new form of social security. And also, you can increase taxes. Here I was like, making a joke. Bill Gates says, let's tax the robots. But you can also increase taxation on other forms of profits or incomes. And so you can find a mixture of reorganization of the current expenditure and more taxation. And what about the risk of complacency? In this case, Andrew McAfee says, I took this from one of his TED Talks, social mobility in the US is actually now lower than in Northern European countries that have this kind of safety net. So basically what he's saying, look at the Northern European countries. They already have this kind of guarantee minimum income, and they don't have problems in social mobility. So apparently this means that you don't have any problems with the complacency and people not looking for a job or not improve themselves. I was quite intrigued by this. I'm not an MIT professor, but I'm European, and I know Northern European countries. I've worked with the Northern European countries, and I know the numbers. And I know that they don't have the minimum guarantee income, except for Finland that studied an experiment last year. What they do have forms of social welfare that may look like the minimum guaranteed income, but they're closely tied to a lot of other things. It's a big package that includes training, services, placement. It's not just about giving money to unemployed. And actually, if you look at the unemployment expenditure, I was very curious. I went back to some data from the OECD. If you look to unemployment expenditure, Northern European countries are the ones who spend the less on that, not the one who spend the most. They don't give money to the unemployed, as someone may think. Sweden, Norway, Denmark, they give even less money compared to the US. So where do they invest the money? Where the answer is, it's here. They spend a lot of money in activation policies. They take the unemployed person, they set up a personalized path of training, of going back to school, of going back to other companies. They accompany them, they support them, they provide incentives to the companies that want to try them, to hire them. It's a path, and they help this person moving forward. And if you look at this, that's where you see Denmark, Sweden, Finland, the Netherlands. That's where these countries put their money on. And that's what really works. When it comes to workers that are displaced by technology, it's not just about the money. Of course, you need the money. Services cost money, believe me. You need a lot of money to put up services, but it's not just about giving the money to the worker, but it's about the support. It's about the training. It's about inclusion in a very complex process. Surviving in the job market, it's a very complex process. It's about not leaving these people alone. So, and to do this, we don't simply need cash. We need services, we need information systems that works, we need care. We need follow-up, calling these people over and over to make sure they are doing the courses and the training they're doing, to make sure they are having all the support they need. In other words, in simple words, to cope with robots, we need human beings. That's what we need. We need the very essence of being a human being. And I'm not sure that all of us are ready for that policy making is ready for that, because this means rethinking everything, even about our social welfare. Most of us still intend the social welfare in terms of giving out cash. But that's not going to work in this case. We need to do much, much more, but we can make it. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we had time for questions. Right, yes. The guy is still at lunch? Okay, that's fine. I can do that.
Hi, and thank you for your presentation. So you've talked about the need of productivity redistribution that comes from the rise in technology. So redistribution intended as a redistribution for the population that don't find the jobs that are actually captured by the rise in technology. So my question is, you've talked about robot taxation as a capable solution for this problem, but where is then the incentive for those that actually maintain the capital to actually invest in the advances in technologies, and then to, for example, to invest in new robots that can produce better and produce more respect against humans?
Okay. That's a good question, and actually makes me think I've done a good work in not showing my personal beliefs. So I wanted to provide you with a very objective presentation of all the pros and the cons of the current arguments. If I may actually now say my own opinion, I don't think that taxing robots is a solution. I think actually would give a lot of problems in supporting innovation over time, and especially if you do it unilaterally in one country. For example, if France or Italy decides to put a tax on the profits that comes from innovation, well, you basically kill your companies, you kill your competition, and you will kill more jobs. So that's basically what will happen. And I don't think that's a solution. And in general, rising taxes, you always have to do it very carefully. But if you really want to put taxes on innovation capacity, I think this is really suicidal. What I just wanted to say is that there are no easy answers. Is that I don't think that the minimum guaranteed income is an answer alone in itself, not because it's crazy, not because, but simply because will not solve the problem, because the problem is not just giving cash to people to address this kind of deep transformation. But we can rethink our systems, our social welfare, our protection system, but together with the innovation production companies, these things have to be brought together. Because you can't solve the unemployment problems without thinking about the production competitiveness and productivity problem. These two things has to go hand in hand, but we can't deny that if we don't see the diverge that we are facing, if we don't see this problem, it will blow out of proportion, it will blow up in our face, and it will be much worse than when it explodes than now to address it in advance. So I hope it was clear. Okay.
Hello. Pronto? Sì, si sente. Okay. What about working on a cultural shift that is fundamental to all of this? For example, complacency. Being Italian, living in Italy, we can expect it because we have sort of lost a sense of value in not sitting in front of a TV all day long, because who cares, I can do it. Okay, and we have lost the value in being productive, in doing something, and in doing it not because I have to survive, but because I have a role in society. Being someone that cleans someone's home, or cares for someone's children, or teach someone's children, and so on. So as a policymaker, what effort do you think should and can be put into education? Education not technical, but cultural. Helping older people, meaning my age, 50-year-old people that can be scared of what's happening, that live a digital divide that it's very larger, and that they are often biased against, not hired, not taking, because you're old, what do you know? And that has to be taken into consideration in making any kind of policy. Otherwise, the risk is to do things that leave out, forget about people.
Cultural shifts are hard. Maybe harder than addressing the transformation that comes from technology. But I agree with you, especially if you want to make sure that people are motivated to do this transformation, to get trained, to improve themselves, to learn the new technologies, to go back to work. And this is something that affects, especially, as I was saying before, the lower skilled kind of people. The very highly skilled, they are workaholic. Actually, we have the opposite problem with them. We have the problem of keeping them home sometimes, I have lots of friends in Silicon Valley. They have made millions and millions by selling their startups. They could really watch TV the entire day or go swimming, and they keep working like more than before. They work like 15, 20 hours a day, travel the entire world, and you don't understand what really motivates them. But when you have when you are high up in the ladder and your work is about using all your skills and talents and creativity, work is fun. Work is really good. When you have a perspective to build something new, to grow, to learn, to improve yourself, then work becomes something really cool and really fun. The problem with lots of workers, they don't have that. Many, many types of jobs are jobs in which people do the same things over and over. They don't have perspective of learning, of growing, of traveling the world, of having fun, learning something new. That's where we should work, and that's what we should change. I talked to some trade unions, labor unions, sindacalisti, okay? I think they have a big role in this, in helping policymakers and work together in making sure that when you negotiate the contract, unions negotiate the contracts for all the workers in certain sectors. And typically they negotiate how many days off in summer and how much pay and these kinds of things. I think they should start negotiating something different. I think they should start negotiating times off to go and travel the world and learn and go back to school and take a college degree, a master's degree. Why couldn't we do that? They should try to set up programs to exchange workers from factories and companies from one country to the next. We have sabbaticals. In finance, in academia, we have sabbaticals, and they're really cool. And we are really looking forward to the sabbatical. Why a blue collar or a white collar cannot have a sabbatical to go outside, to experience life and work in a different country? How much cultural shift would bring this in the work and in the world of workers? I think this is a big cultural shift, and we have to do this all together to bring creativity, innovation, and passion for learning and improvement, even in the lower kind of jobs that we have today, and help them to go up, or at least to find the motivation to go back every day at that work and think together how we can make things better. I think it's something, it's doable. Actually, right now, one labor union is actually fighting for the right to training for workers, even in manufacturing companies. I think this is a big, big thing, and I hope that other unions would do the same. So to negotiate for workers the right to get training. And I hope this expands to the right to have training abroad, to have exchanges, to have sabbaticals, to have a very meaningful and learning type of work. I think that's the only way we can do that.
Hello, I'm Lorenzo. I have a simple question, maybe a bit provocative, maybe, I don't know. You talked about gig economy and all the robots and so on. And I mean, startups are all about failure. I mean, they always talk about the risk of the failure, the benefits of the failure, and so on. So I'm thinking about Foodora or Uber or Deliveroo and so on. So we always say about, if we let the workers become employees, then as you said also before, the cost of the labor will rise. But I mean, if a startup which is born for solving a problem is not able to solve the problem by giving the rights of its employees to do their job, what's the problem? I mean, if you are trying to solve a problem, but you cannot do it right now in this situation without giving the possible a sustainable life to your workers, what's the problem? I mean,
I agree. I was just, as I told you, I was presenting you with the arguments in favor and arguments against. I think the arguments of, possibly destroying jobs instead of creating that, it's a very serious argument. So in the sense that how much I can increase the labor cost in order to grant the rights of the workers, to what point, after which I actually harm the workers instead of helping them. It's a fine line. You have to be very careful about that. But one thing I'm sure, and I agree with you, and I remember saying this very abruptly to a startup entrepreneur, and I say, if you claim that you are an innovator and your startup is doing amazing innovation, you're changing the world with your innovation, I'm cool with it and I'm very supportive. But if all your competitive advantage is about how little you pay your workers, then you're not doing innovation. You are not competing on innovation. You are competing on labor cost. And that's not innovation. So you have to think about that. And I agree. So if all your competitive advantage is not the innovation that you do, but the fact that this innovation allows you to pay $2 for your employee or your worker or whatever you want to call it, then maybe innovation is not, you are not doing the right kind of innovation. So you are disguising exploitment through the word innovation. And I agree with you. But as a policymaker, you always have to be very careful and put aside all your ideas and ideologies and trying to find the line in which above this line, I'm not helping anymore, I'm hurting because I'm destroying jobs instead of making them better. And so maybe you can find other things like, like we are doing, trying to provide social security to forms of work that are not employees. So try to balance different instruments to find the equilibrium. But I agree with you. Yes. Another one, and then maybe I think I was allowed 4 questions, so. Oh, the microphone. I don't know who's got the microphone. No, I'm sorry, but this place is not. No more questions? Okay, in private. Okay. Thank you very much.